Hello everybody and welcome to the season finale of the Booking Office. I'm Mike and today it's the showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania VIII from the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana, Sunday, April 5th, 1992. For those of you who have not seen or been following along with any of our previous episodes, number one, shame on you. Go back and watch them because you're going to want to know how we got to where we are now. This is a challenge that was issued to me by John the Body Johnson, my old broadcast colleague from my days in Anarchy Wrestling. He asked me to rebook the entire WWE from January 1991 all the way through WrestleMania VIII in April of 92. But I have to do it with the WCW babyface roster. The entire babyface roster of the WWF got fired on April 1st, 1991. Somehow, some way. Maybe they instituted a wellness policy or something. I don't know. But for whatever reason it happened, I instead inherit the entire WCW babyface roster instead. But I still have all the WWF's bad guys. I've got all their heels. So, what do I do about that? Well, we have booked an entire year plus worth of pay-per-views and Saturday night's main events. And it has brought us to this, WrestleMania VIII. To give you guys a little idea of what's going on. Last time we had the Royal Rumble, which Ric Flair won, and we crowned a new Intercontinental Champion in the form of Jushin Thunder Liger. And the Royal Rumble pay-per-view led us to Saturday night's main event from Lubbock, Texas, where Sting, who was the last eliminated from the Rumble, Flair eliminated him to win, but Sting had eliminated the world's champion, The Undertaker, and by virtue of defeating The Undertaker, or eliminating The Undertaker, from the Royal Rumble, President Jack Tunney of the World Wrestling Federation has decreed that Sting would get an immediate match, the next opportunity at the World Heavyweight title, which was Saturday night's main event. Sting wins the world title, beats The Undertaker with a roll-up in 25 minutes. However, now, the thing to keep in mind here is this go-round, it's not bang, bang, bang. I don't have, essentially, pay-per-view, and then 6 days later, another pay-per-view, and then 3 weeks later, another pay-per-view, and like 3 weeks after that, a TV special on NBC, and then, it's not that. This time I've got 2 months from Saturday night's main event to this. So, let's take the card and give you guys what we're looking at. At WrestleMania VIII, we are going to have the Intercontinental Championship on the line. The Intercontinental Champion, Jushin Thunder Liger, to defend against Brad Armstrong, who has been looking more and more impressive with each and every week on television, and all of his recent pay-per-view appearances. We're going to have the Heenan family, the model Rick Martel, Mr. Perfect, Big Bully Busick, and Haku, who will be accompanied by Sensational Sherry rather than Bobby Heenan. Remember that Sherry is Rick Martel's valet / manager, so she has a spot in the Heenan family as well. They will be taking on Lex Luger, the former World Tag Team Champions, the Steiner Brothers, and the King of the Ring, King Wildfire, Tommy Rich, in 8-man tag team action. The Undertaker is going to go one-on-one with young Marcus Alexander Bagwell. We're going to have the newly formed tag team of Money Inc., the Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase and IRS Erwin R. Shyster, as they will take on a very unlikely duo, which we will tell you how we get here in a minute, of the Macho Man Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. The Mountie, with his manager Jimmy Hart, is going to take on Big Josh for the World Tag Team titles. The Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, will take on the world's tag team champions, Smash and Crush of Demolition, who will, of course, have Axe in their corner. The Natural, Dustin Rhodes, goes one-on-one with Skinner. And for the Heavyweight Championship of the World, our main event will see Sting put his world's heavyweight title on the line against the self-proclaimed real world's champion, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. So, some of these matches have stories to them, others do not. So, let's go down the list, so to speak, shall we? The Intercontinental Championship, Brad Armstrong versus Jushin Liger. It really, in this case, is simply a case of two very talented individuals, two incredible athletes who are both wanting to excel. This is a baby match. I looked at the roster, and one of the things I thought to myself was, and I kind of regretted very early on, was I felt like we were somewhat robbed of the Kurt Hennig Bret Hart match from SummerSlam 91. We did have Sting Kurt Hennig, which is certainly a hell of a match, but Sting wasn't the in-ring technician Bret Hart was. And to have that type of clinic just, to me, would have been phenomenal, but I felt like we missed out. And I felt like when we reached SummerSlam 91, the best person on the roster for that match with Mr. Perfect to do the technical classic might have been Brad Armstrong, but Brad Armstrong wouldn't be in that position yet because Brad Armstrong wouldn't have the credibility Bret Hart did coming into the match. Bret Hart had tons of credibility from being a tag team competitor for many, many years and a multiple-time world tag team champion. Brad Armstrong literally just walked in the door. So it couldn't be Brad, and I needed to build Sting. But now, almost a year after the fact, now I do have that option of putting Brad Armstrong in this type of match because I've had a year to build Brad Armstrong's credibility, a year and 4 months in this case, of having him always look good, always be competitive, and at this point be on a bit of a winning streak where he has been out wrestling the world. So it's sort of back and forth on TV, and we have an announcement maybe a month ahead of WrestleMania that right after Jushin Liger's last title defense, which probably is against Big Bully Busick. He probably goes around the horn with Busick again in a series of rematches. But the decision has to be made on a new number one contender to the Intercontinental title. The Championship Committee is in closed session. My monitor goes black. What else is new here on the booking office? And so something has to be done, right? So who's it going to be? The closed session, the decision comes back, and what I want to do in this case is something very old school, something that hasn't been done in a really long time. We're going to actually get to see the WWF Championship Committee, a panel of experts, so to speak, who decide the contenders. So at the head of the table will be Jack Tunney, and we're going to have essentially a panel of 7 individuals. On this panel, we're going to have Pedro Morales, former Intercontinental Champion. We're going to have, on this panel as well, Gorilla Monsoon, who by this point is less an announcer and more does officials' duties, things like that. We'll have Tony Garea, who is seen repeatedly as an official. We will have Earl Hebner. Earl Hebner's a referee, but we're also going to say that in this case he's a voting member of the Championship Committee because I think it gives more credibility to the referees if a referee sits on the Championship Committee. He's still a WWF official. Jack Tunney himself has a vote. He's one of the 7. We will also have, as a voting member of this committee, probably Jerry Briscoe. just to have him there. And the Briscoes had long been in good standing with the WWF. And then last but not least will be Pat Patterson. And Pat Patterson, the very first Intercontinental Champion. The question will be, who's going to get the shot at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental Championship? The votes will come in, and the votes will be split. There are going to be 3 votes for Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, the former Intercontinental Champion, who has been looking damn good. And there will be 3 votes for Hennig and 3 votes for Brad Armstrong. The final and deciding vote will be Pat Patterson's. And Pat Patterson will deliberate and take his time for a moment, and he will announce that his decision, his vote, is for Brad Armstrong. And Brad Armstrong becomes the number 1 contender to the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. So, Jushin Liger, who's interviewed shortly after this through an interpreter, is very pleased that it's Brad Armstrong. He too thinks that Brad Armstrong very much deserves a chance at the Intercontinental title. He feels that Mr. Perfect too would have been a worthy challenger, but the idea of testing himself against such a clean technician as Brad Armstrong makes him very, very happy. He wants that challenge. And so, very much a baby match. They're going to have 25 minutes to open WrestleMania. And they're basically going to be given the marching orders of tear the house down. The reason this is the opening match, which frankly goes against a lot of my booking sensibilities, to open the show with a championship match. But I really felt like I needed that much distance between this match and the world title. Because those are the 2 matches that are really, really, really going to be putting in the time and are going to be just the 2 where we're going to tell them steal the show. At the end of the day, 25 minutes, Jushin Liger will get a small package on Brad Armstrong, and Brad Armstrong will roll through the small package 1, 2, 3, and he will hand Jushin Thunder Liger his very first loss in the World Wrestling Federation. Brad Armstrong will win the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship. Brad Armstrong was such an underrated in-ring performer throughout his entire career. Jushin Thunder Liger is one of the greatest junior heavyweights that ever lived and could hold his own in a heavyweight environment. The IC title is the worker's belt. So really, even in an environment where I now do have Ricky Steamboat, although not for a heck of a long time, I haven't had him for very long up to this point, in an environment where I still have Randy Savage, who by this point has pretty much moved beyond being Intercontinental Champion. But in this environment, where I have such incredible workers on the card, Brad Armstrong and Jushin Liger would be a hell of a match and a hell of an opportunity. And I would love to see that, frankly, on a big stage given a lot of time. So that's what we're doing. And Brad Armstrong breaks the Armstrong curse and becomes Intercontinental Champion. Second match on the card, the 8-man tag team match. There's not really a whole lot of build to the Heenan family versus Tommy Rich, Lex Luger, and the Steiner brothers. Everybody looks good on TV. It probably gets some, probably gets announced 2, maybe 3 weeks before Mania. So there are some good promos back and forth on TV. None of these guys actually get in contact with each other for the most part. But at the conclusion of the match, the finish is going to be 15 minutes. Rick Martel is going to pin King Wildfire, Tommy Rich, after Sherry Martel sprays Rich in the eyes with arrogance, the atomizer gimmick that he was using back then. And this is effectively going to make it 1-all. Martel got eliminated by Tommy Rich at the Rumble. Now, Martel pins Tommy Rich in this 8-man tag at Mania. And the rubber match is probably at SummerSlam for the King's crown, to determine the King of the Ring. So, this is essentially to to solidify the program, and then it's the angle that's going to start the actual feud between Martel and Rich. And I like this because it revisits the Tommy Rich Randy Savage feud, which is Randy Savage as the over-the-top, regal, intense personality who carried himself very much like he was the king and everyone else was beneath him. Ooh, yeah. And I don't have enough in my throat to do that voice right now. And Tommy Rich is the everyman. Well, here we get to continue to take advantage of Tommy Rich as the everyman, except now it's a model. It's someone who is brimming with arrogance and confidence, and just the look and the way that. So we're going to get that out of this, that type of dynamic, which I really enjoy. Next match on the card, The Undertaker versus Marcus Bagwell, probably doesn't even get announced until the week before. But the big deal out of this, Undertaker's going to beat Marcus Bagwell like a drum. He pins him after the Tombstone Piledriver in 4 minutes. I mean, The Undertaker, frankly, just lost the world title 2 months ago. The Undertaker's been going through people like tissue paper. However, he's going to hit the Piledriver on Marcus Bagwell, and what's been the lead up here is he hits the Tombstone Piledriver on someone. He's done this a handful of times on TV. Tombstone, 1, 2, 3, picks the guy up, delivers another Tombstone, and officials hit the ring before anything bad can happen. Basically, grisly revisitings of what happened to Ron Simmons. Here, he hits the first Piledriver, 1, 2, 3, but the runway at the Hoosier Dome, the entranceway is long. So he picks him up for the second Tombstone and actually hits it. And then here come officials who are shied off and knocked away. And when he goes for the third Tombstone, Ron Simmons makes his return, hits the ring, boom, 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 and fights The Undertaker away from Marcus Bagwell before any permanent damage can be done. Ron Simmons has returned to the World Wrestling Federation, the former World's Heavyweight Champion. And in this, he's going to wind up getting set for a second program with The Undertaker, essentially. It's not even really a second program, it's a continuation of the first. So, Undertaker holding the title, losing it to Sting, all of that from Tuesday in Texas in December all the way to Mania, which is 5 months. Really, this has just been a 5-month interlude to the Undertaker Ron Simmons program. The program's about to start, and the next chapter would be at SummerSlam. So we would have that, which in my broad stroke version going forward, this probably leads to the Undertaker's face turn. Ron Simmons will not say die, will not stay down, will be in Taker's face at every turn. We will eventually have probably Papa Shango, who I really haven't used much. He's been on TV here and again. The reason I haven't done a lot with him on supercards and pay-per-views and whatnot is because I really don't want too many supernatural characters, and initially The Undertaker's enough because I've got him in a certain spot. But probably Papa Shango will be the catalyst for it, where he will go to do something, perhaps even in the blow-off to Ron Simmons, and The Undertaker will stop it out of respect for Ron Simmons. That he's taken so much punishment, he won't stay down, he will not die. So anyone that will do that, anyone of that character, that level of toughness, has earned the dead man's respect. So that's sort of the broad stroke going forward after Mania with that. Next match on the card, Money Inc. has formed as a tag team in recent weeks. On television, Randy Savage has had matches, main event TV matches with both of these guys, as has Ricky Steamboat with DiBiase and IRS. And essentially, at every turn, it seems like one has the other's back. So Savage is fighting DiBiase, and IRS somehow interferes and DiBiase goes over. Steamboat faces IRS, and DiBiase interferes, and somehow IRS goes over. And Ricky Steamboat is facing Ted DiBiase, and IRS gets involved, and so on and so forth, until finally, 1 week on television, leading up to WrestleMania, we would have Ricky Steamboat in the ring. I should have said Savage versus IRS and DiBiase gets involved. But, Savage gets cheated again. Somewhere in this, now we have Ricky Steamboat facing Ted DiBiase. IRS goes to get involved, and this time, here comes Randy Savage. Savage saves Ricky Steamboat. We basically get the promo of the last time we were in the ring with each other at WrestleMania, we made magic happen. We tore the house down. People consider it the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And Ricky Steamboat, if I'm honest with you, it's never set well with me that the last time we were in the ring together, I wound up on the losing end of the equation. But this is a different matter entirely. I've got all the respect in the world for you. I always have. And Ricky Steamboat, it seems to me somebody's going to have to watch your back against these two, just like somebody's going to have to watch mine. If you can trust me, I can trust you. Let's do something about this. And we have Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat form a tag team. They don't need a fancy name. They don't need to be the Macho Dragons or the fire-breathing or fire-breathing madness. They don't need any of that. It's Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat, and that's literally all they need to be called. But they're going to hit the ring at WrestleMania to take on Money Inc. and lose. Why? Because it's the first match of the program, folks. 15 minutes, DiBiase will pin Randy Savage. Something has happened to Steamboat on the outside of the ring, so he's down. Big comeback by Savage. He's going to can IRS to the floor. He's going to boom, boom, boom on DiBiase. He's going to go up top for the big elbow, but IRS is going to jump up on the apron, shove Savage off so that he misses the elbow. DiBiase will pin him 1, 2, 3. So still, and it's going to basically be a case of Money Inc. will be wrestling tag team matches, all the while these 4 other singles matches have taken place. So they've had more time to gel as a tag team, whereas Savage and Steamboat have not. But they're going to have time because, hey, SummerSlam. Or Saturday night's main event. There's a lot of time coming. The Mountie is in action against Big Josh next. Again, this match doesn't need a build-up. Probably doesn't get announced until the week of Mania. And the Mountie goes over in 8 minutes with his CCT, the nerve pinch sleeper he used to do. For the World Tag Team titles, the Rock and Roll Express will face Demolition. Basically, Rock and Rolls look good on TV. Demolition looks good on TV. We probably do the, a little bit of maybe it's Ricky Morton versus somebody with a member of Demolition on commentary. Say it's Smash versus somebody with Morton and Gibson on commentary, that sort of thing. The match will simply be signed because the Rock and Roll Express have earned the right. Plus, going back to the Rumble, it had a number of good performances against the World Tag Team Champions. And they probably will have been trading wins back and forth on house shows. Always non-title for the Rock and Rolls are not going to be given a shot at the World Tag Team titles until. Or it's a lot of 6-man tag matches with the Rock and Rolls and somebody against Demolition. But finally, the Rock and Roll Express will defeat the World Tag Team Champions by DQ. This is the one disqualification finish on the card. It's going to be by disqualification in 15 minutes when Axe interferes in the match and gets called. The Rock and Rolls, it's a typical Rock and Roll Express versus Big Man match. So, Rock and Roll's Russians, if you're an old school fan. Again, the long game, the Rock and Rolls and Demolition program continues after this, with the Rock and Rolls winning the World Tag Team titles probably around Survivor Series, if we're honest. Because this one can afford to go a while. There's a lot you can do with these two guys. The only reason we're not doing the split them up and have this guy, have Ricky versus Smash, or Gibson versus Crush, or somebody versus Axe, is because we're doing that to set up Savage and Steamboat versus Money Inc. And you don't want to duplicate the program, duplicate the angle in multiple programs on TV. Then Dustin Rhodes is going to defeat Skinner in 8 minutes by pinfall after the Bulldog headlock. This does not need a whole lot of preparation time. We might announce this one 2 or 3 weeks out. Maybe there's a match on TV between Skinner and Dustin Rhodes, and there's a little bit of the spit involved from Skinner, and that somehow facilitates all of this. Or maybe it's a promo with Mean Gene or something like that. Probably a promo with Mean Gene, now that I think about it. That will facilitate this whole thing. But this doesn't need a lot of build-up because, frankly, it's just further establishing Dustin Rhodes. The goal in my head, the long-term, again, broad strokes going forward after this, Dustin's going to be in line for the IC title by the end of the year. Chances are Brad Armstrong loses the Intercontinental title before the end of the year, probably to Mr. Perfect, and that's going to set up for a Mr. Perfect Dustin Rhodes match. And that's where we're gearing Dustin towards. Because I think you can expect a lot out of Dustin Rhodes. Longer term, I think you could probably even get Dustin to a point where it would be believable for him to win the world title. But the IC title is a good spot for him. You don't want to run him down everybody's throat. He needs to collect wins, be in meaningful programs, and without being a clone of Dusty, he's good enough to be in those personal programs without a championship on the line. So, I like that a lot. Finally, it's main event time for the Heavyweight Championship of the World. It is the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, with his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, who, for the record, has gone on record in interviews that he is not accompanying the Heenan family. The reason it was just Sherry earlier, he is not accompanying the Heenan family. The decision was made for Sherry to accompany the rest of the family because he wanted to give Ric Flair his full and complete attention with this all-important world title match. He did not want to split his attention between anyone else. He and Flair are focused on Sting. Because I want to give this that level of credibility. Because I have multiple managers in the Heenan family. I have Sherry and Bobby. I have the luxury of doing something like this. You used to see Bobby Heenan. WrestleMania III is a great example. He went out like 17 times and popped the popcorn, and I think he was parking cars before the show. All at that show, and he was managing the main event with managing Andre against Hulk Hogan. But if this were for money, marbles, or chalk, as Lou Thesz used to say, then he would have been focused on the world title, just like Andre should have been. And you wouldn't have seen him before the world title match. And that's the case here. So, we have Ric Flair, Bobby the Brain Heenan. The argument for how Flair gets in this match, and it's almost entirely promos, is very, very simple. If you had Sting receive a title match because he eliminated the world champion from the Royal Rumble, well, Sting's the world champion now, and Ric Flair eliminated him from the Royal Rumble. So now where are we at? And that becomes the question. Additionally, and I'm going to go back and check some notes here. Let me look. Also, Flair beat Sting at Survivor Series in their Survivor Series match. They're going to bring all of this up. Flair has got wins on Sting. Sting hasn't beat Flair. Sting, fighting champion. We see him in interviews every week just like we see Flair. Sting's going to say, hey, look, you say you're the real world champion. Here's your chance to prove it, Nate. And I would even have him very loosely reference their past days. We're no strangers to each other, Ric Flair. I know you all too well. Yes, he can be alluding to just what's happened in the WWF between Survivor Series and the Rumble. But any fan who watches all of wrestling, and let's face facts, a lot of them do, they are going to know the history back to WCW. So, Ric Flair, Sting for the world title, they're going to go 35 minutes. There's going to be some gaga. The Heenan family is probably involved. To the point that Sting is basically knocked unconscious while he's in the figure 4 leg lock, and he gets pinned while in the figure 4. Sort of like Dusty Rhodes did. Your winner and the new World's Heavyweight Champion is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. With shenanigans, because it's Ric Flair. But we're going to do something that's never been done at WrestleMania. The bad guy wins the main event. I know that the old adage was always send them home happy. They did that a lot in all the early WrestleManias. The heel never won a WrestleMania main event. It's just the way it was for years and years and years and years. The first time a heel won a WrestleMania main event was WrestleMania 9, when Yokozuna pinned Bret Hart. But even then, Hogan came down and won the world title after the main event so that the fans could go home happy. I've never subscribed to the idea that the fans have to go home happy at the end of every big show. And yes, it's WrestleMania, and yes, it's a huge deal, but I want to see Sting win the world title from Ric Flair at WrestleMania. So, this is step 1, and the idea is the rematch 1 year later for WrestleMania 9, Flair Sting 2, with Flair losing the world title to Sting. For the record, if I'm still booking, they do not have another match until WrestleMania the following year. Somehow we dodge every bullet for a rematch there could possibly be. Maybe even say that Bobby Heenan had it put in the contract that there is no rematch clause. So, who knows? But that's that. That's WrestleMania. To recap, Brad Armstrong captures the Intercontinental title from Jushin Thunder Liger in 25 minutes after reversing a small package. The model Rick Martel, Mr. Perfect, Big Bully Busick, and Haku, the Heenan family, accompanied by Sensational Sherry, defeats King Tommy Rich, Lex Luger, and the Steiner brothers in 15 minutes when Martel pins Rich after getting spritzed with the arrogance in the face from Sensational Sherry. The Undertaker, with his manager Paul Bearer, defeats Marcus Bagwell in 4 minutes with Tombstone Piledriver, but permanent damage brought to a halt by the returning All-American Ron Simmons. Money Inc., Ted DiBiase and IRS, after DiBiase pins Savage, who just got pushed off the top rope, missing the big elbow courtesy of IRS. The Mountie beats Big Josh in 8 minutes with his patented version of the Sleeper. Of course, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, was at ringside. For the World Tag Team titles, the Rock and Roll Express defeat champions Demolition by DQ due to outside interference from Demolition Axe at the 15-minute mark. Dustin Rhodes beats Skinner in 8 minutes by pinfall after the Big Bulldog headlock. And the Nature Boy Ric Flair shenanigans, horseman style, helps him win the World Heavyweight title from the World's Champion Sting, who passes out in the figure 4 leg lock at 35 minutes. Bobby the Brain Heenan at ringside to celebrate with the new World's Heavyweight Champion, his man Ric Flair. So folks, it has been fun to book this here over the last several episodes. This is the season finale of season 1 of the Announcer's Booth. My book, or not the Announcer's Booth, the Booking Office. Sort of a spinoff of the Announcer's Booth, but my book is now closed. And it will be for about a year. However, it's not the end of the Booking Office. This is the point of the show where I'm about to cut a promo on somebody. John the Body Johnson, I sincerely hope you're listening. For now several months, several weeks, it feels like months, I have answered your challenge, and I think I've answered it well. I have rebooked the World Wrestling Federation under some ridiculous circumstances in what was one of the worst planned years for major TV events in that company's history, if we're all honest. But that's the challenge you laid out to me, and I answered it. So now, I have a challenge for you. But it's not any ordinary challenge. I'm not giving you one challenge. I'm not giving you one challenge to book an entire company for a lengthy period of time like you did to me. No, I think we're going to test your brain and your range. Because one of the things I've always given you credit for, JJ, I've always said you are one of the best on-the-fly bookers I have ever met. That you could take a situation, presented with it, and figure out a way to fix it in pretty quick order. So I'm not going to give you something quite as drastically revisionist as what you've given me. No. I'm going to take some flashpoints in wrestling history. Little moments where what if this one thing had changed? And I'm going to give you 13 of them. And we're going to see over 13 weeks if you can rebook my what if scenarios. JJ, the ball is now officially in your court. And if you're out there watching, folks, and you've enjoyed this edition of the Booking Office and you've enjoyed my rebooking, then I suggest you tune in for Season 2 in 2018 of the Booking Office Express with John the Body Johnson, where he's going to take my challenges and see what he can do with them. So, folks, until then, next time around when it's John the Body Johnson joining you, if you've liked our video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't liked it, hit the thumbs down. If you haven't already done it yet, hit the subscribe button. That helps us out a lot. And you can pick up some merch to help us out here at the network with lighting, with mics, with cameras, with equipment to help us out here. You can do that by going to cafepress.com/ECS network. Buy yourself a t-shirt or something nice. It's the holiday season after all. Get yourself a Christmas present. Until next time, folks, when it will be JJ in the hot seat, I'm Mike, and I'll see you around.